Welcome to Three Count Commentaries. So let's talk about this thing that's been floating around the internet. So somebody went to the dirt sheets and said that WWE management thinks that AEW Blood and Guts set the business back 30 years, which is probably what they wanted, if we're being honest. All right, so let's do a little. I really don't like talking about things that have no names on it. I mean, we don't even know whether this is true or not. Now, I do know that there's a lot of people who have been very negative about Blood and Guts. One of whom is the person who kind of started this whole thing, who is Dave Shearer of PW Insider. He's been very negative about Blood and Guts because he doesn't like blading. And Blood and Guts not only had blading, but had open blading where you can actually see the blades. Now, when you talk about setting the business back 30 years, I think that sets the business back probably 50 years. Is you got guys basically just carving themselves up in front of the world. The camera picks it up. You can clearly see it. It's like you clearly saw the crash pad. And I think that might be more of a bigger problem than anything, is that the look, the secrets are out. The magician doesn't really have any more tricks. But at the same time, you don't just take a razor blade to your head on national TV in front of everybody and then think that, oh yeah, I did a great job covering up that I was blading. It's like, no, that's not what happened at all. You actually you did an obvious job of cutting yourself. All right, so I don't disagree as far as the execution of the event. When you see people hitting each other in the head with steel chairs, there was an actual headshot with a chair in the match, which was weird. I could say that they were trying to do a lot to get ratings, get TV, and let's just sidebar a little bit to talk about, because I see a lot of AEW talking about, oh yeah, we were number one with a .4 in the demo, and he had over 1 million viewers. I'm like, you had a shade over 1 million viewers. Had more than you had 1.2 million viewers 2 weeks ago, right? So they were really kind of celebrating being number one in the demo for the first time ever, which, of course, that's what you would expect when you have a War Games match on TV. It better draw. So I don't see why we throwing confetti in the air for a War Games match. Unless you're going to have a War Games match on every TV show, I don't see what the big deal is. So what? I don't care. But that's really what they wanted. They wanted to go back and be old school, and this is kind of old school, Clash of the Champions kind of thing. Okay, cool, whatever. But let's talk about this WWE management. All right, so my thing is, I said to myself, who in WWE management will sit and watch this shisa in their spare time? Would Vincent Kennedy McMahon be watching AEW Dynamite on a fucking Wednesday? No. So I doubt it was him. He probably didn't say anything about it. He probably don't even know what happened. Do you think Stephanie is watching AEW Dynamite in her spare time? No. No, I don't believe that at all. Do you think Nick Khan spends his time watching AEW Dynamite? No. I can bet the three of them don't. No, doubtfully Vince probably heard about it and will have a big negative. He's never really been a big fan of Blood. He just did it to win the war. But it was, no, I don't see Vince caring that much about it. Now, who do I think, if anybody, did say something? Most likely Triple H, who's a worker, and fucking Bruce Pritchard, who I can almost tell you that's who it was that said it. Through the process of elimination, you can look at all the people but it depends on who you consider management, right? But I think that somebody who is management, who watches wrestling probably in their spare time and keeps up with it, it was more than likely Bruce, right? So I don't care. Once I figured out that it was probably Bruce, I was kind of like, yeah, Bruce is probably bullshitting. Do I think that AEW Blood and Guts set the business back? I think the execution of it did. You can see people cutting themselves. There's a book by Ole Anderson, and he started, and I Could not read. I barely finished the introduction on the thing. I'll probably catch up on it later. But he says that, wrestling was in the toilet before Vince McMahon came along because there started being a lot of fake actors and a lot of would-be fake actors getting into wrestling. And he also started talking about football players and stuff like that too. You could add them to it, the Sonnenbergs and the Goldbergs and all that type of stuff, right? And basically, he says that people stop watching this shit not because people they know that it's fake or they're being told that it's fake, but because wrestlers have gotten really bad at actually wrestling and doing what their job title states. And that's really what got me wanting to read it. I was like, oh, I really want to see what he means by this. But when you see on the number one wrestling show on Wednesdays, they're very specific about, what they're number one in, though, and we have the youngest demographic. I'm like, yeah, about like 6 years. But in any event, when you look at that and you see how obvious a lot of the spots were, a lot of the blading, they were licking each other's blood and doing a lot of stuff that, people find to be unsavory and, barbaric, which is what they were going for. But again, the whole thing is you have to think about sponsorships and whether the network supports them and all that kind of stuff, which they seem to. So when you take all that stuff into account, I see why people would say, this was very sloppy. It was not professional. Maybe that's what they mean by it set the business back 30 years because it was a very sloppy production. The pillow was obvious. The blading was obvious. A lot of the spots were obvious. There was people slipping and falling. Sammy Guevara almost broke his goddamn leg at one point. So there's some things to think about and there's some things to discuss. So I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I don't necessarily agree or think that anybody super high in WWE management even gives a shit about AEW Dynamite because literally very few people do. All right, so I'll talk to you guys later. Like, share, subscribe, throw cash to feed my shawarma addiction, and I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.